Don't burn me down. Don't burn me, burn me, burn me. Don't burn me down.
How do I start this? What a time to be alive. Doing a Battlefield 5 competitive players video. Good times, good times. What is going on, guys? Hope you're having a good day. It's finally here. Well, part 1 of 2 is finally here. There's going to be 2 videos on this. I've decided to give the top 20 players the most attention. So I guess the majority of players who might be interested in this video will be addressed in this video, I think. There's so much to talk about. Obviously, got a bunch of precursors here. I'm going to go through them, but I mean, number 1, I have taken so long to make this video because this is the most cliche, corny shit ever, but it's genuinely true when it comes to my videos. I hate watching them, but I enjoy making them, so I was like, I'm gonna hate this video as soon as I make it. But that's the reason why it's taken so long, because I'm gonna be my own worst critic, essentially. I guarantee you 100% you will not critique this as much as I will, because I'm gonna get something wrong and I'm gonna be pissed. I've probably made like a grammatical error here that's gonna trigger me. Some obvious, like, this guy's not as good as this guy, or this guy's way better than that guy. The good precursor is to say that I will be wrong. It's my best go at something which was very hard to do, right? My YouTube channel, my video, my opinion is naturally subjective and limited to my experiences, as I've said. That includes things like bias in region. Like, you see this with Kamika, for example. His NA bias is probably stronger than I've seen bias in a lot of people. Part of that is his friendships, for example, with certain players, but you see some player cards and you just think, so you see some players, I think Phantom started with a 90 rated, and you see, I can't even remember his name, it's some American guy on, like, not on TKO, TKO being the best team. So if they're not on TKO, then how the fuck are they 93? I have bias as well. There's probably some NA players I don't know about which are better than I've rated them. The video is relating to literally right now, like, not even late February, it's literally like early March. I've completely missed the peak of Battlefield competitive, right? There's going to be a bunch of players who were the best at the time. I remember I was talking to Bull in a pickup party, and he was saying how Cortec was, I mean, he said like 4 different people were the best players, but he mentioned Cortec, and I remember watching him play the first 8v8 final versus Venom, and I remember him being on that roster with a bunch of other players who don't play now as well. Some players who I'm sure are very talented aren't playing anymore, and players who maybe in the past aren't actually as good as people say they are. Recency bias is a thing, but also rose tinted glasses is a huge thing. I don't think Cortec probably was the best player. Sorry, you know, that's just my uneducated, wasn't there at the time opinion. Doing this video, I've watched so much video on players. People don't usually do that, so I guess what I'm saying is I have done as much homework as I felt like I needed to make this a good, you know, analysis of the current competitive scene. Even saying that, some players which are on this list have literally gone inactive. I think the highest ranked player who doesn't even play right now is number 3. You could say 2 and 3. I know this, obviously you don't know this yet, but like, don't really play the game that much. And I've put them as 2 and 3. I've given bias to people who are playing more now, but I think if some people did play all the time, they'd be nuts. Yeah, like I said, it's literally Battlefield 5 form off the top of my head. It's not, I've watched video, specifically for the top like 50-ish players, if I could find it easily. Some people need to do better, promoting their shit, by the way. For some reason, that actually makes you a much better player, I think, in people's heads. I think Ash is a very good player, but he makes like he's made like one Battlefield 5 video, right? So like, people don't even fucking know. But I think if you make content regularly, then people suddenly start thinking you're a god, which is quite funny. Anyway, my point is that it's literally just form. It's just like, you know, if you're in a pickup queue, where would I take you? There is no real proper method to this. As you probably got the gist of now, there's a massive margin for error, right? So like, there's going to be a mistake, there could be like a direct situation where you think one player is like directly better than this player in all way, in every way, right? This player plays SDG, this player plays SDG, I think this player is consistently better than this player, and it's proven to be, and it's won more things, and blah blah blah, and why is he ahead of this guy? Like, you could make that argument. I'm just asking, like, make it in like a proper way. I think this because of this, and I think this, A, B, directly compares with D, E, F. That's the point, right? Instead of just saying this is shit. What I'd rather do is, because I'm accepting this is going to be flawed, is to have someone say, okay, this is my list instead. This is how I would have done it, and people can then kind of like, you know, do it more together, right? I was going to ask people for help. I was going to ask Geordie, Rubber, Ash, I think I showed this to in the early stages, and I'm pretty sure I haven't actually gone through with that. I didn't want to like absolve the blame. I could be so far off the reality here, but hopefully me saying this sort of gives it some sort of flexibility where it's like, this is not the encyclopedia Battlefield 5 history of competitive, right? This is not the video where your legacy is cemented, right? Please, if you feel like you've been wronged, prove me wrong, right? Just show that you're better than the ranking I put you, or there's only so many people who can be like the best, right? So I've seen so many people in the comments of these YouTube videos I was watching, so many dudes like being declared by their friends as like the best player. Like I've seen like 4 different Arabic players have their friends say like, you're the best player. It's like, well, you know, you can't all be the best, right? All 4 of those dudes, you would have to be like, well, one of you's got to be one of you's got to be 4 in that situation, right? So like, I think there's always a hierarchy in everything. So I think there's only one number 1 spot. So if you are 35, that's because I think there's 34 players better than you. Like, that's not a lot in the world, right? So also have some perspective that we are talking about, but people who do still play, this is the creme de la creme. Hopefully people take it as a compliment that you're all mentioned. There's 130 odd people that I shortlisted and had to go through them, and it took a while. It really did. So and there's no way you can get that right. There isn't really a correct way to say this anyway. Like, the whole thing's opinion. So even if you do criticize, when criticism comes, it's going to be like, well, it's just my opinion versus your opinion. Who can validate that more, right? Who can discuss it in a better way, which makes it a flawed discussion to have. So if you take it too seriously, then that's just your fault, essentially. Guaranteed to trigger literally everyone. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Past me. This isn't for popularity. There's going to be people that I've played with who are going to be like, the fuck? The amount of people that actually got invested in this video, or this theme, I guess, before it's come out. I'm trying to take that as a compliment that people actually give a fuck about my perspective on this, I guess, but my perspective's not as good as anyone else's, really, to the point where I'm literally going to piss people off that I like and hang out with, play with. Sometimes you're going to be lower than you think you should be. You're like, well, you call me a beast, but I'm a beast who's like fucking barely in the top 100, right? I'm trying to be as 100% honest as possible, but also give myself some room to say, well, actually, second look at it, yeah, you can make an argument. It's just a fun little vid. And no, I'm not including myself because, I mean, first of all, not top 100. Secondly, that would be a bit bullshit if I was to rate myself. If you really want to find out where I would rank myself, maybe I could be persuaded to say, my point I'm not putting myself in is just the principle of like, this is not for me. This is genuinely for everyone else to basically be praised. No one really goes out of the way of doing this. Like, I know when people have their matches casted, they actually really like it because it's like, it's just like a cool thing to have you talked about and be like, oh, look, mom, it's me on stream, you know. To 20 people, not a crazy amount, but it's like, it's cool, right? It's taken interest in you and your games and stuff, and I think this is just another form of that. So please let me know your feedback. I don't mind if it's negative. I'm pretty used to it at this point. If I've got the list wrong, then you do the list. You start with 130 players, try and rank them in order, and then see how that goes. It's hard. It's really hard. And as soon as you start realizing, yeah, I'm probably really biased here. Yeah, I'm probably making this list just to praise my friends. Yeah, then as soon as you start taking that away and going, okay, let's have a serious list here, or trying to make it as close to a legitimate list, then it's hard, genuinely. But I think that's another point, just to say that I am trying to do this for the best reasons. I'm going to try and promote them all with their YouTube channel links, so it's not a negative video at all. Oh yeah, I completely skipped over probably the main point which people have been asking me about, which is how you're going to deal with this MK issue. You know how I feel about MK or Cronus or any sort of cheating. Spawning in 5 seconds early is irritating. You know, ringing, irritating. Just do it legit. You know how I feel about all that kind of stuff. I don't feel the need to mention it, and I've decided to basically mix everyone and just be like, if you really want to know who is legit and who's not, then genuinely just DM me and I'll probably have an idea. And if I don't know, I'll say I don't know, but I probably do. At least about those top sort of 50 odd players. Got a decent idea at this point after a couple of years, so it's, you know, just ask me if you're really interested. I felt like it was too hard to separate, and when you have even a slight bit of doubt, like I think this guy is like 90% MK, but I don't really want to go that far because I haven't got proof. Well, proof, you've got like 3 different people saying it for 3 different separate reasons, but you'd never really like, you know for sure. So I've decided basically not to mention it at all. Some people you just know, and I don't need to mention. Some people are, you know, legit and probably should get more praise than they are getting. If you care about that to that point, as in you feel like you should be higher above MK players, then literally just take them out in your head. Like literally just make the list and subtract all the players that are MK and then bump yourself up, and you're probably like top 10 all of a sudden, like, you know what I mean? So that's the thing. But yeah, I decided just to mix it because it's easier, and like I said, this is a positive list. It's not me complaining about anything. It's not a podcast. It's genuinely like as gay as it sounds, like a celebration of people that play this game. I think we're pretty much done. I could ramble on. First of all, tanks and planes I know fuck all about. I realised. So I've basically not even ranked them, but I have got a list of players that I want to mention, so let's do that. This is literally a mention. Obviously, I think it's worth mentioning that one of the biggest changes this game has had, the move from BF1 incursions where you've got a dedicated tanker in every single team. You are 20% of the team, you are incredibly important. The whole team basically revolves around you. So there's players on the bottom of this list such as Lacerate, Bloody Slayer, Spider as well. Akabash was a big time BF1 player, was really important for their teams. Nowadays, when you've shifted from BF1 incursions to you know, 2 out of the 3 main maps, when we just had Aras, Rotterdam, Hamada, those were the days, and we just rotated those 3 maps. Obviously 2 of those 3 had a tank on, so 66% of the fucking, you know, maps had a tank on, and now you've got I think only 2 more in all of these. I think it's like 14 odd 15, no, I think it's something like that. It's low teens maps with, right now, I think 1 tank map in the rotation, because I think they took Aras and Hamada out because of a bug. Mercury's got tank banned on it pretty much since the start because it's just a farm fest on the hills. That leaves Wake Island, and you've only ever seen Wake Island played in a couple of BFN matches recently. Tankers are so watered down compared to what they used to be. It's difficult to even tell at this point. Like, I know from past experience playing against Corvette, for example, in the T16 game Venom vs Twizy, he was a massive pain in the ass. We actually kind of, I mean, we won the game overall, but we kind of won as a tank squad because we got him down a couple of times where you wouldn't usually see him go down. Massive pain in the ass. It's got I've got one of the most glitchy clips. I don't know how he knew I was there. Tank's coming down on E-Flag.
He's coming down to E.
Hey. Bye, Jim. You're the tank's next target. Honestly, if we just hold this, we're fine.
How?
Tank, bro.
Where'd you get killed from?
Gosh, those hacks! Did you see that? I'm just standing behind the building. But I guess I gotta give the credit to him for that one. So it's just like he's definitely one of the top tankers in my opinion. If he isn't right now, he was definitely for a decent period of the game, I think, in my opinion. So I think early game he was probably the best. Obviously Jaffro, absolute beast. I think he's lost interest in the game recently, so that's a shame. But I think during his peak he was, I think, the best tanker. He was, you know, grinding the game, playing for like 5 different teams. You could ask him one day, can you play for us? And he'll be like playing like 3 scrims a night and shit, beaming everyone. One of the best farming tankers you'll find, where he's pretty good at pacing. So 1 second he'll be dueling the tank one-on-one for about 10 minutes, and then 1 second he'll be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go. Like, you can play both styles, sort of like a flex sort of tanker thing, where you can do not just the tank battles but also the infantry slaying as well. I had some funny moments in his T16 with Jaffa as well, when he's just, I think it was like half drunk in a small tank and just beaming people. That was pretty jokes, but he's definitely one of the top tankers as well.
Oh, that's a 100 ticket comeback, boys.
Nice.
Let's fucking go!
Let's go.
Yeah, we won.
Yo, Jeffrey going around. He's dead. He's dead.
Spider, I mean, I barely ever see him play, but when he does play, he just fries kids. Pretty consistent when I've played with him. Or played against him as well. I remember playing Venom vs. Tribe, and he was, I think he got like 20, was it 20 something or was it 30 something? It's on his YouTube. Very good tanker. Again, I think he could be better if he played more. Now I think he's hovering in the top 5 sort of range. Adamant as well, I think because of Zach's like sort of history, I think he's been underrated as a player personally. There's so many things which you could find fault with personality wise, things he said, things he's done, so many things that if you take a step back and I think just look at him as a player, I think he was a very good tanker. You could throw the criticism that, you know, he was a tanker on a stacked like 1-up team, and that obviously makes it better for everyone. In terms of like a tanker leader combo, you don't usually see that. I guess the closest guy to me on this list who can do that sort of role is probably Oscar, because I think Corvette's pretty quiet. Tankers are interesting because some of them are really, I think these are like the quietest players in the game on average. Like Jaffro's like probably biggest fault is when he's quiet. Corvette I've never really heard being particularly loud, but I could be wrong on that. I guess there's only so hype you can get in a tank, but probably Adamant and Oscar on this list are the only two which are particularly vocal from my memory. Obviously I love Oscar. I think he knows he can be too talkative at times, but no, going back to Adamant for a second, I think he was one of the best tankers in the game. It's interesting to see people's perspective on him because it's obviously very like sort of polarizing and controversial, so it's difficult to sort of see where he would fall in contrast to other players, especially when he was sort of actually playing, because obviously now he's playing COD. Oscar's like a wild card, right? I think he could, on one day he could be the best tanker in the game, bar none. He can just do some wacky shit. Obviously played with Oscar since HDE disbanded. Him, Nacho, and Juan's joined Tribe. I think the first game I played with him, he went up the stairs on Hamada, like with the mini tank or something, the Staghound. It was fucking hilarious. Just like, didn't even know you could do that. Such an Oscar thing to do. Just have the tank's on Overwatch. Okay, one of those Oscar moments. There's also a time when we played against I think it was against Adamant, so I'm not sure what team that would be. I guess it would be 1-up. Essentially just went behind him off the rip of a RAS, just went straight through B with a small tank, straight like the whole way around the Arash map and went up his ass, and he didn't even see him like the whole time. It's just such an Oscar thing to do, where he's always the guy to challenge the meta, try and find something new in the game to exploit. One of the highest IQ players in the game, and definitely, like I said, it can be a wild card sort of tanker. Some days he can be just very, very sort of intuitive and smart, and I assume, as I can't speak for other tankers, but I assume it's a pain in the ass to play against him at times. Just the things he can do and the risks he will take. Obviously that would get him killed at times. You know, if you did that same tactic 10 times, it wouldn't work, right? You get beamed every time. But if you do wacky shit every so often, then it kind of works. Winter as well, one of the guys who was way more active in BF1, I think probably early than BF1 as well. Barely plays now. I think I played with him like once in like a Venom internal, but when I did play with him, he was very good. I also find it funny, wanted to point out that we have Jeffro, Spider and Winter, obviously all UK players, and we are kind of blessed for tankers. If we had like a game mode where we needed 3 tankers, we're good, you know, we're fucking set. But no, that's all I can really offer without waffling. DH Killer, it's beautiful, isn't it? Just the way the world spins. That I'm doing a video about a guy which essentially led to the end of my league, basically. The reason why you would have a ringer is because he's worth it. You don't bring on ringers who are shit, right? You don't risk that for a bad player, so I think that kind of says it all. Although when he is playing infantry, Devastation, famously, BWL final versus Italy, hilariously campy as an infantry, but what can I say, as a tank apparently he's very good. Probably the strongest Middle Eastern tanker. So that's definitely a crown he can take. Moving on, Bloody asked for a special card, and I made it, and then I realised that I'm not really doing cards for everyone because that would take fucking ages. and I guess I'll show them at the end of this video, sort of like the templates, because I made loads of different players and then realized, for different teams, sorry, and then realized like actually if I'm only doing cards for the top 20 players, then you'd have to have a player in that top 20 to be a thing. So I made team cards which aren't in the top 20 or don't have a player in the top 20, right? So that's a shame. So I'm not going to use them. If I was commentating in the future and I had a chance to, I would like maybe make cards. But I think Blood is an example of a player who it's difficult to sort of gauge honestly how good he is because of things like from Panama, obsessed with pandas for some reason, but also is like you have to respect him as a tanker. He's gonna have games where he pops off. I remember playing against him in a BF1 Frontlines game and he kind of beamed everyone. But I remember playing against him and he was a good tanker. Obviously high ping in a tank makes it interesting. So again, like I said, it's kind of hard to gauge, but he's definitely a notable tanker. Hacksaw again, the KD King. It's very fun to kill him in pubs, which I've done multiple times. Because obviously he protects his KD like his first child. But no, he's a good tanker. He's a good tanker. Lacerate, another UK player, hilariously. If your fourth best tanker in your nation is Lacerate, then you're in a good spot. Definitely a strong player. Cantoro, obviously the Spanish tanker, definitely respectable. Sebastian's another Spanish tanker who you have to watch out for. The point of having these guys listed is that if you play against some teams and their tankers are just like some random dudes, you can really expose tankers at times if they're not like top notch. If you see one of these guys that go up against like Cantoro, like Sebastian, it's like this is going to be like I'm going to have to actually take the tank down like with a coordinated attack, not just like yeeting at a guy and hoping for the best. Like he's gonna kill you if you do that. Hungary's Tiger as well, Form 1-up player. Probably didn't get that much playing time because 1-up's tanker spot was a bit stacked with Adamant and Jeff. But again, a respectable tanker. Again, activity-wise, probably would be higher if he played more. Trifax is someone I have to mention as well because he was obviously much better in BF1, probably as a whole, than on BF5. A lot of that again is due to interest in the game and activity, honestly. Probably one of the more slower tankers. But people have said that about Corvette as well, but it's like, you know, sometimes that's how the game has to be played. As a tanker, you can't go throw your life away all the time. Chiquita's obviously a decent tanker as well. Has played quite a lot of games, which is probably one of the reasons he's on the list, is because he's got a lot of experience as a tanker, really, especially compared to some of these guys who have sort of gone inactive. Like, you know, when's the last time that Winter played? Who knows? Chiquita's probably playing more than other players are, so he definitely has that over the competition at times. But I thought I'd mention Akabash as well as a guy who I remember being very strong. I think he had like a very brief comeback with GV, but has sort of gone active again. Moving swiftly on, guys. Pilots. I have 4 people. I know nothing about pilots. If you're coming to me about pilots, then you're in the wrong place. All I know is that Too Easy's best pilot is Mythical Mighty, and the other 3 are all Venom pilots who I've played with. I think it's hilarious that a guy who's as good at infantry as Rebba is also one of the top pilots in the game. I think that's a hilarious little skill, sort of dynamic for a player to have, in the same way that guys like Jaffa and Oscar are very good at infantry as well as tanking, which probably makes them in a tanker debate. You could always pull that card out and say, actually, well, you know, Adamant was really good, but maybe it was better to have Javro playing because he could sort of flex infantry better than Adamant could. That's definitely a valid opinion to have, I think. Same thing with Rubber. I guess you could say that he's one of the best pilots on that basis, but I guess if you want to go really like in depth, then, you know, Dubsy, obviously Australian player, he was very strong when I played with him. ECM apparently was like one of the best pilots in the game for a long time, kind of fallen off a little bit now, but is still considered one of the best pilots. Again, Mighty's the best Too Easy pilot, and Too Easy's obviously like top 2, top 1, top 2, like T16 team, so that's kind of a very, very quick pilot little discussion, because I have people asking about tanks and pilots, and I was like, I'm like the Lewis and Campy guy from Tribe, right? Like I don't know shit. Moving on to the juicy stuff. Formatting wise, I originally started off with 130 plus players and tried to do them in order, like in number, right? So like, who's the 100th best player? Who's the 99th best player? Didn't work. That's my rabbit, sorry. That format wasn't working, so I decided instead to do tiers. I left out bunch of players because I only have 5 tiers. 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. Again, I had to be kind of ruthless with this shit, really. You can't have everyone in the top 1, top 2 tiers, right? So, like, if you're in tier 5, you're one of the best players in the world still. Right, if we're being genuine, then you're one of the best players that plays this game, which millions of players play in the world. But also, in comparison to your peers, I thought that these are the players who are more effective, in my humble opinion. There's a bunch of players who I wanted to mention but aren't in tiers, or if there's a situation where everyone was playing DS4, then that would actually be higher than they are on the list, sort of thing. So let's do that real quick. Error from Rag, always been sort of like a core piece of their team. Roosbury, I remember playing with him on Tribe every so often when he filled in. Had a few games where he'd pop off and get like 22 kills or something. Very underrated player, probably because he played so. One week he was playing 3 games a week, 1 week he completely AFK, right? Daddy, again, a good guy that you have to sort of watch out for. Frago as well, obviously the Portuguese ambassador, very sort of capable player, can definitely sort of lead in game as well. Apologies folks, my voice is going already. Unbelievable, we haven't got onto the fucking list yet. Alexa Trio of Bega, Twiz of Bega, both, you know, core pieces of that team, capable infantry players, you know, consistently getting about 14, 15 kills a map, playing a role in the squad is you know, very important in a team, and I think those guys do that. John McClane, what a guy, what a fucking guy, man. I don't know who the fuck this guy is, but he's a good guy. I like him. I don't know if he's like another player. I feel like he must be. Where the fuck did Carol go? Imagine if. Anyway, John McClane, what a beast. Pretty like slow paced player. John knows I get on his back a few times for being a bit too slow, but we have a laugh, and he's definitely a player which I thought I mentioned from pickups. Rasa as well. Played with him a couple of times on Tribe. Obviously one of the Finnish players. One thing I found with the Finnish players is that they all sound the same. I feel like you could be in a party with like 10 of them and you'd be like, wait. I can recognise a few guys. Sevadinho I recognise pretty quickly. Vuxel as well, but maybe that's from playing with them a lot. The rest of them kind of sound the same, which I find quite funny. You got 3 crawl guys there: Terrorist, Hangover, and Miko. Probably the 3 best mad players. Miko, I remember playing against him in BF1 all the time. Very good player. Same with Hangover. Honestly, same with all these guys. Wamak again used to be a top sort of BF1 guy within the teams that we were playing. Definitely a strong player who can slay out a few times. Frack, as someone who doesn't know him, he comes across as the typical guy who doesn't play anymore but is still like involved with the community. At times that can be kind of like fun and like, oh look, it's that guy from this time period of the game, and you know, how you doing, bro? I haven't spoken to you in ages. Also, you could flip that and say he comes across as like that guy who just like, whose chat's shit, and it's like you're not even playing the game, right? So, like, roasting into glasses to the max sort of thing. He wanted to be mentioned as like a meme mention. There you go. That's just my honest opinion. Neck as well, one of the German guys from DSO. Definitely one of the best players on that team. And then Maxeek as well. Maxeek's interesting, right? Because okay, so he's on the PLG team, the competitive team. Obviously one of the, probably the, if you count him in the community, then he's the most popular player in the community by a long shot, I think. Like YouTube subscriber wise and influence wise. I kind of get frustrated with him because the amount of promotion he could give the competitive scene by playing games like semi-regularly, like once a week, like could do wonders for everyone. Which is why, like, I think it's always good to be supportive of like competitive players who make content and all this kind of extra shit which you don't need to do. It's so much easier just to hop on the game, play a scrim and fuck off for the evening. Like, that's way easier than like actually making videos. And I've mentioned him because some people think he's the best. I don't think he is, obviously. I mean, he's not on any of the tiers because of the competition level, right? I think he's if you want to make a ranking of like the top pub stompers, then he's up there, top 3, right? I'm saying that as like a safe bet. He could be just number 1, right? But you can't tell if he's the best because he doesn't play against good players, right? So it's really like, how good can you be? People basically say his gun skill's really good, his movement's really bad. People generally say that his aim's really good, gun skill really good, positioning is too reckless for it to be successful in competitive, right? So like, you know, you do things on pubs which you just wouldn't do in competitive, and you can't therefore contrast them, so you don't really know. Apparently he played like a mid-tier team, did kind of mid-tier performance wise, wasn't crazy. I kind of get the sense that he wouldn't be interested in the competitive scene for whatever reason, or if it's, you know, not what he was expecting, if he was expecting to dominate, or what. If he did get more involved with it, he could do a lot for everyone. As definitely a very skilled player, and I really want to play against him. Really want to play against him, just to sort of gauge. I mean, I'd have to play against him like 10 times before I've really realised, you know, how many times is this guy getting me in a game. But all right, back on the sticks. TF5. Here we go. Not many players. We are going to try and do a sort of individual analysis, one shot. You know, SMG, French player, plays pretty fast. I know he duos with Nico pretty well. On that French lineup, I remember playing BD Roll games, spectating them. He was one of the top sort of SMG guys. Thomas says everyone knows him from Law leader. Definitely a good player. Definitely someone you have to account for when playing Law. Avivi Warrior, same sort of thing. Desert Fish, same thing. Norwegian legend, probably one of the more underrated players in my opinion, actually. Definitely remember him being very good with the rapid fire Tommy gun when that was allowed in the rule sets. Good times. Yeah, definitely a good player. Rida Carver, obviously currently the Spanish ambassador right now. I think he plays for GV. Very good player. Can definitely play a few. I think he can play assault medic pretty well. Can flex those pretty well. I don't know how to say this guy's name. If I say it, Miwula, butchered it. Absolutely butchered it. I don't have to say that, but I know he's a German player, and I know he probably was better on BF1 than he was on BF5. But I thought I'd mention him as a player who is still good. Statics, one of the more sort of slay orientated medics. I say that as like a slight criticism, that I think he could be higher if he was more focused on smoking and reviving, which is kind of the medic meta right now, which is like, you don't want your medics to be getting 25 kills, really. You want your medics to be like getting like 18 and like most score in the lobby, right? That's kind of how you want them to be, capping flags, holding spawns, playing fast when needed, playing slow when needed, and just like healing your dudes, reviving your dudes, smoking off positions. And I think he plays medic the way that medic used to be played on T8 during the fast TTK, which is first guy in, get a 2-piece and die sort of thing. But still, very good player. Pretty good in gunfights. Plays pretty quick, which is obviously a difficult thing, but it's also kind of like a give and take sort of thing right now, with a sort of slow meta. Ben as well. I remember him being like the only guy to, maybe like one or two only people to ever run the 97 bullet Lewis gun specialization when you didn't really need it at all, and I think that was one of the weirdest decisions I've ever seen in terms of like, that doesn't make sense. But he's still a good anchor player, I know that for sure. He was sort of GV's anchor for most of early BA5 T8s, with the Lewis gun or Brent gun or something like that. Could call him Big Bren. That could work. But no, he's a good anchor. He's definitely slow. That's kind of the, I guess, the implied criticism, is that he could be higher if he was a little bit faster paced, but, you know, good accuracy, good positioning, all the kind of stuff you'd expecting. Gemini, obviously one of the players who played in the BF1 land for Buffalo during the summer for ESB. I mean, the team didn't do particularly hot, but he's, you know, if he's worthy of being there, then he's worthy of being on the list, I think, and a competent player for sure. Menez, I think, famously Geordie made him retire with the underground C random spawn. But no, still a very talented Spanish player. Probably if he stuck with it a bit more, he could get very, very good at the game. I think if he played from the start, he'd be more sort of inclined to stay. But I think he's focusing on other games. Dejando, I think recently stopped playing, unfortunately, but he was also, I think, one of the players on that Buffalo team at the LAN event. So, you know, again, a good caliber player. Plays the sort of Lewis gun support role. But no, definitely a sort of slower Lewis gun accuracy sort of support player. Volk, this is one of those guys where I feel like he could be higher, but I just genuinely don't know anything other than, I don't know, if that's an excuse. I know I don't know him that well, but I know that if he's with the team around, with the players around him, I guess he has to be a certain caliber. That's probably one of the weakest justifications we'll ever hear. A Chapter fan as well. Was he on the Hit Rich team? But it's still a good aim, a good sort of support piece. Probably like the fifth guy in the lineup sort of thing, but still a very good player. QTR plays for Tribe. Probably one of the few guys from the Middle East who doesn't hate me. Thanks, QT. Appreciate that, bro. But no, he's a support player. I remember him playing FG quite a lot. But no, he's a good player. Good accuracy. I think communication-wise is probably his biggest weakness, but apart from that, very competent. Moving swiftly on to Tier 4. Undeathable. I feel like you kind of get where we're going in terms of like quality of these tiers. If it genuinely did shock me if you said like Navs and Undeathable would be like Tier 4, then you'd be like, you know, out of, as in one's the best tier, then it's like, Just so you know, Tier 1 is just the top 20. Originally, it was going to be, like I said, just a pure player list, and then it was going to be like each 20 block is a different tier, and then I realised like it doesn't fit perfectly, right? Like there's quite a lot of players in Tier 3, for example. I think the most in Tier 3 than any other tier. But it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It's kind of just like a bell curve, so it kind of makes sense. You know, you're not going to have that many players in the Tier 1. That's because they're the best players in the game, right? So it's just how it works. And Deathball is definitely one of the guys who could be easily slotted into Tier 3, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid. Probably same as with Naz, but that kind of gives you an idea of the quality of the players we're sort of getting into. And Deathball's obviously sort of like you kind of see this a lot in Saudi, Iraqi players. They tend to play very similar to each other kind of thing. So you will see a lot of SDG leaning, corners, kind of slow positional play. But if you're in their sights, you're probably dead. So it's kind of same thing with the Deathball when I played against him. Navs, I think, was probably in his peak during early BF5 time, but he's definitely a good player. I played with him a few times in pickups. I prefer him as a medic, sort of zooming around the map with ZK, but he's a good player, good communicator as well. Semic's one of the sort of lesser known players in the Middle East region, but he's definitely a very strong player when I played with him. Again, communication probably an issue if there was to be some sort of criticism given, but no, very good player. Fury, oh yeah, I've kind of put Fury as like the most active cruel player. Sort of like moving up the list compared to the other guys who I mentioned. I think he plays for 300, or at least played for a while for them. You know, it's probably the best player from that team. Luigi, wow, what a throwback. Yeah, so basically this is the thing where this leads me on to a little segment of, I remember watching the 300 1-up ESB Season 2 final, something like that, where they did during the time when Battlefield 5 was in a bit of a state, and NA server for some reason was the preference rule in ESB, which I never understood in a game where you had most of the teams in Europe. For some reason it was given that the Americans had the upper hand, and 300 really took advantage of that. Luigi Biscotti was one of those guys who you saw in that team that sort of beat them during that time. Funny name, that's all I gotta say. Joan, obviously one of the guys from TKO, same with Icky, same with all these guys actually. I kind of might as well kind of group them together, because I feel like these guys come into, again, the category of could easily be top 3. A few of them probably could be top 2 if I knew them better. I remember watching those guys during the BWL pre-season international for the North American team, and obviously they sort of played really tough teams, like sort of straight away. I mean, they only really played the KSA guys and then lost to Italy in the next round. So they only played the 2 top teams in the tournament. So you could make an argument that they were top sort of 3, top 4. I would say that the UK guys that I was playing with was the 3rd best team. If we weren't better than Italy, I'm always going to say we would have won that game, but who knows. But they're in the conversation, right, in these sort of top national teams. If you were to do the North American thing, honestly, that team was probably so deep without really that being acknowledged at the time, is that they had plenty of good players. And I bet a few of them are higher than tier 4 essentially, but I thought I'd mention it because they're all the guys who came over from Xbox. I rate that personally. I think that was a good decision. And they all came over to start playing on PS4. Obviously it hasn't really turned out as like the big thing they're expecting, but I guess America and Battlefield isn't very popular really, at least in the competitive scene. Chap as well. Chap's an interesting guy. He really is. I remember Chap being the guy who was like top 3, top 2. I think maybe at one point top 1 incursions like score guy. But then people have said, that's not a good, barometer for skill. I think at one point I was like 14th when I was like, no one who knew who the fuck I was. You can get a few wins, you can string like 6 wins in a row and all of a sudden you're like top 20, And then if you do get on top, then you just stop playing the game, you just sort of hoarding points at the top, you can stack it with the other top 5 players and never lose. What's going on, guys? New dawn, new day, new voice, new clothes, dodgy haircut. Just going to continue where we left off, essentially. When we left off, we were talking about Chap and incursions and his sort of ranking then. I guess having thought about it again, I think it's to the point where that kind of stuff is genuinely irrelevant to like current form. Obviously, different game mode. So long ago that it's barely in memory. It kind of is in the territory of rose-tinted glasses sort of thing. If you do think it's valid, a lot of people didn't think it was. Is the top ranked incursion player really the top ranked player in the game? Probably not. That's not necessarily how it works in a sort of like, it was pretty much some sort of pickup, choose your own god squad at the time sort of game. I think the last significant thing he played in was the ESB stage, just the first ESB test cup, which he played the last just the last map with us, when Bojo sort of got the surprise meme team win. Saying that means that was quite a long time ago now, so it's really hard to detect like sort of current form. Still think he's a good player, probably sort of like a more rotational sort of T8 piece. Still a very good player. I only say that in sort of like a harsh criticism kind of way because of the sort of past expectations would be pretty high, and I guess that's kind of gone down a little bit now. So carrying on Romies, I remember playing against him in a T16 versus CS. He was sniping kids, so I assume anyone who whips out a sniper against competitive players must be feeling themselves to some degree, so that's why he's on the list. I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit. Nico, absolute beast. I remember playing with him in the early days of Tribe when he was like one of the 2 best players alongside Dom, and sort of pretty slay heavy medic who can play sort of both the slay heavy, you can get 26 kills on a T8 on a given day, and can perform the medic duties when he's not feeling so hot on that day. So definitely a very good player. Definitely sort of guy who won't cause any troubles on your team. You sort of guy you want on your team, to play a certain role, to play that hard medic in your squad, and just to be like, okay, we can have 3 assaults or two assaults and 1 support in our squad, and just let him do his thing. Moving on, Sharpie. I don't really know too much about him, but I know that when I played against him, he's been pretty strong. Fructus, BDO admin, reppin'. What a beast. But no, it's interesting because obviously PLG have got him and Slap on the same team. Both play the same support role, but Fructus is, despite being older, is probably faster than Slap. I guess that's a little bit of a jerky point, but like, they're pretty much very similar, but just turn up the pace a tiny bit, turn up the leading a tiny bit, and you've pretty much got Fructus. I think rarely plays, so it's kind of difficult to gauge particularly well, but I think definitely a guy who, I think this goes for a lot of support players who still play support, is far more effective in T8 than T5. T5 you've got to rotate, and support doesn't lend itself to that. Slower ADS times, fairly slow fire rate apart from the bar. If you do play the bar, you've got to be pretty good at pretty much everything: aiming, pre-aiming, reaction time, sort of magazine management, I guess. With the 20 bullets, you've got to make sure you don't always get caught out and get free kills. So as a guy who plays like Lewis Gun, I guess he struggles on T5 more than T8. Moving on, Alessio, another guy in PLG. I remember I sort of, in my head, I sort of associate him with the type 100 sort of laser beams on a map like Narvik or a map like Provence. So definitely a strong player. Aaron used to play with him on Venom for a few games. I don't know him that well, but definitely sort of like a slay heavy kind of guy. He's not gonna be screaming down the mic or anything, but he's probably gonna silently just try and rack up like 15 to 20 kills with an SMG. Kama, a guy who I thought was going to be sort of on one of the higher tiers on this list. I guess kind of recency bias. If you asked me this literally like 3 months ago, he'd be in tier like 3, maybe tier 2. But I think recently sort of stopped playing the game as much. And I think in that time period, people have really sort of, I guess with the way the game's played now, with a lot of sort of T5, T6 being the focus, you really do lose sort of like the evolving sort of map knowledge and stuff. And I think that goes to a lot of players who stop playing, where it's just like, you know, do you pick a guy who was one of the best players on like a very successful 2-meter league team like literally 3 months ago, or do you want a guy who's been playing like mid-tier level T5? So you actually probably want the mid-tier T5 guy, because he probably knows small little rotational things on maps which can make a difference. Kama obviously a good team leader and all that kind of stuff, so I was very sort of like conflicted with the tiers here. Could easily put him in top 3 and I wouldn't blink an eye. Again, I remember probably as the biggest sort of compliment I can give him was when Italy were given the forfeit win by yours truly because of ringing. And no, it's because I'm racist. Because of ringing. You know, we were talking about MVP stuff with Cameron. It was like, okay, you know, let me know who you think MVP is. We're kind of thinking it could be you, could be Jukes, and Cameron basically said, "Don't give it to me. Like, give it to Jukes. I'm the leader. I don't need it," sort of thing. And I think that was definitely a sort of really good sign of leadership and maturity, and definitely an admirable thing to do. Mad respect for that. Sean Bully, what a fucking beast. Best player in the world. I'm joking. I guess the missing bar would be that, because I guess that was his peak time, like I said, during that sort of NA server bullshit. Probably his sort of peak time, again, surrounded by good players, which is kind of, funnily enough, the same sort of formula which Adamant followed, which is they're definitely competent players, but you probably want to say that like the guys around them were sort of brunting the force, I guess, and both sort of took like a slightly lesser slaying role for an increased leadership role, which is usually how things work, honestly, in most sort of life situations, is if you take on a higher leadership role, if you're calling the strats, if you're focusing on the minimap more than you're focusing on the end of your iron sights, right? Like that's kind of how that works. So I guess that totally makes sense. But that was the time when he was at his peak. Since then, not really being particularly, I guess, relevant, apart from sort of roster acquisitions, I guess, becoming, ironically, I guess, Adamant's like protege pretty much, without actually being mentored at all, but basically just doing the exact same thing Adamant did, which is recruit a bunch of MK players. Quite ironic, I guess. Rix, who probably more notably known as Tribe Monster during the time when Tribe was at his sort of like peak T8 team, probably the best like pure. I guess that's the thing, because it's a criticism as much as it's a compliment. Monster knows I love him, and I think he'll know as well that at times, to be a good reviving, healing medic, you have to trade out like the kill, and I think at times that's sort of like a weak point. If you are to find an area to criticize. So I guess the only thing which can make him more of a pure medic, ironically, is actually upping the slaying a little bit. But I think really one of those kind of guys where you sort of see that he's maximised potential in a situation which makes sense. You know, stick him in a squad with Miash and Miash Wire, or Miash, Dom, Miash, Dory, Vuxen, whatever. You know, really slay heavy squad, and he'll do more medic work than, the 3 medics on the other team. One of the most like niche role players who actually does well. Like some players have a very niche role, like, really hard support AR who barely does shit. But I guess if your niche role is reviving everyone on the fucking map, then that's obviously a very good thing. So definitely thought he deserved to be here. Moving on, quick thumbs. I learned, actually no, I'm not supposed to talk about this. I played against him a few times in T5 on the 2 Easy team when they were playing together. Tradey, kind of kill orientated player, but again, you're expecting a lot of these guys, you're expecting 15 kills. Same with Tenacity, honestly. I don't know him too well, but it's the same sort of like, you're expecting these guys to keep up with everyone and to drop 10 to 15, every so often drop like 18 sort of kills 18-20 sort of kills the map, and that's not going to be particularly a surprise. You know, this kind of what you're expecting from these guys to have consistent performances. Moving on, KQ8, probably one of the best Arabic players since sort of like early to mid BF5 T8. I haven't really seen him that much, but definitely I thought a player which, when I was playing against him, was like, you know, you kind of remember having that guy FG42U Alpha Heglich. It's interesting because I don't think a lot of players have played different roles as much as I have, honestly, in terms of early game being known as like the 3 times Lewis gun guy. And nowadays it's like in pickups, for example, people are like, you're playing Midic, yes. It's like, yeah, that's kind of that transition. The point of me saying that is now you see the map completely differently. Like before, I would be like, okay, who's their support player? I'm gonna beam him off the map. Like, you know, I'm gonna win most of my gunfights against him. You've got to sort of take out your opposite number, sort of thing, as it were. And he was one of those guys during the Lewis gun era, I guess, for me, was to watch out for. Faisal, probably one of the leaders of the KSA team. I guess he's kind of fallen out of favour a little bit now, but I don't know too much about why that is. You know, one of the sort of core guys, more early BF5 for that team. Hyper, I know he's been looking for a sort of he's consistently been looking for a team for T5. He's actually a really good player. The underlying implication is that there's other things about him which people don't find attractive, I guess. I'm not sure what that is, if that's like toxicity or like communication or like sort of passion to play the game, or I'm not sure what that is, but you know, he's found himself on a few sort of scrappy T5 teams and done decently, but not great. So he's kind of in this sort of limbo area where you could if he, you know, found a really solid team and started grinding the game, you could find him in like the tier 2 sort of area, and that would be like the FS. Eldith, again, what a guy. Probably, in my opinion, has kind of dipped since the Tribe days. That top T8 team that we had for like a month at its peak. You know, very, very competent support player. Is happy to play a role for a team. I remember having like sort of issues with roles on that team, but he was happy to work them out. And same thing with the Italian team. He was happy to play a role and contribute to their win in the BDL International. So a really good player. I love him. I miss him quite a bit, actually. I haven't spoken to him for a while since he's joined GV, so that kind of sucks. But he's a really good player, and I think I was watching the Tribe vs Venom highlights the other day from ages ago. Like, yeah, watch this. Not even close. That's such an Eldith thing to do. That's jokes, but no, I think that was kind of his peak sort of area. Again, sort of like I think faster, sort of on the faster side of the support players, honestly. But that's kind of because we pushed our support players to always be faster than other players, other support players in the team. That's kind of the idea, was to be like, okay, you need to not fucking camp because I'm not your bait, right? Like, you need to go and find your own position on the map and hold it down. Moving on, Zodiac, probably the slowest support player. Like, obviously people talk about Slap, but if you think Slap's slow, you haven't played against Zodiac, bro. No, I'm kidding, but I mean, I think I played a decent amount of TDM with him. He's a good player. I think he's just one of those guys who is, again, has kind of got like a niche sort of role, which is hard support, like Bren gun, laser beam, cross map sort of thing. So he's going to get you like 10, 11 kills on a map, but he's going to anchor some lanes down, and that's actually, you know, again, you can have a guy like that on a T8 team and it works because he's the guy watching that big left flank that no one can be asked to watch in Hamada or something, right? So he's the guy in A tower, he's the guy, you know, medbox tower, like just holding down angles. So he's definitely a valuable player to have. Moving on, Vukasin. Again, I feel like I'm having some sort of like crazy nostalgia trip here because it's like all the old Tribe players. I remember playing BF1 T5 against Vukasin, and he was very kind of fast. I think at least he felt fast playing against. I'm not sure if that's because I was dog shit. I think you've seen sort of like a slowing down of pace from him in general. I'm not sure if that's because of the game or like that's like a conscientious effort to sort of like change his sort of play speed. But I think he's definitely slowed down in terms of pace. That is not necessarily a bad thing, but it just means that you sort of look at him slightly in a different light. Because before always thought, oh, he's the Hellregal guy from BF1, and now I'm sort of thinking, okay, he's the kind of like the leaning Type 100 T5 guy for a run. So it's just a different perspective, I think. But he knows I love him, and really solid player, right? Moving on, Shady. So this is kind of funny because I used to hate this guy. I used to absolutely hate this guy. But that's just when like I was first starting to play. But basically, the best player on that French team that we played all the fucking time with Tribe, and we consistently lost. And I guess that's why I was pissed. But really good player. But I think still sort of applies. Was probably better in T5 BF1 than he has been in BF5. That happens to a lot of players, I think, just because they don't enjoy the game as much, they don't grind as much, therefore, and they sort of lose interest in a sort of snowball effect. But I still think I think he's kind of underrated now, actually, in my opinion. I know he plays for CS now, but I guess he's not playing as much as it would be nice to see him play. Obviously, worth noting, he was one of the players who went to the LAN event for Prototype. I'm pretty sure he had a good few games when I was watching. So I thought I'd mention that as a mad respect to any player who attended the LAN. I've said this multiple times. It must be a completely different sort of environment, sort of a different thing to actually play in real life, I guess. And I've always been interested to see how like I would play differently, or would I play better, worse, like all this kind of thing. Golden Eagle and Warone, again, these are guys who I'm looking at the CS roster and I'm like, I know they're good players, but I don't know from my experience. I kind of know from like word of mouth or like seeing them being picked on teams which are doing well or have done well in the past. So again, it's one of those situations where I wish I could talk more about them, but I just feel like they deserve to be on this list because I sort of can identify their names from their roster as like, okay, these are the top players, but I can't necessarily tell you why. Alright folks, basically this video is like 55 minutes in now, and this is way too long, so slight change of plan. I'm going to end it here, and next video you're going to see tier 3 and 2 and the top 20 in one. So that's basically the one which people will remember. I just wanted to do this sort of video to show that there's a lot of preamble to this, and there's a lot of players to talk about, and hopefully I've done a decent job. Maybe this is good to get any feedback before that second video comes, even though I've already recorded like half of it. So yeah, please give me your feedback and stuff like I've mentioned earlier. And just want to thank everyone for watching the video. Genuinely appreciate it, all the support and hype and shit and interest for some reason that's around this video. And I hope I haven't massively disappointed. Like I said, the other video is coming out on whenever I've said it on Twitter, I can't remember what it is, but I think it's like Thursday or something. It's pretty soon, so don't have to wait too long. Again, thank you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Sayonara.